Hello, everybody. My name is Paulina Degogne. On behalf of SOAP Committee, I'd like to welcome you to the second SOAP webinar. This time, our speaker will be Rahel Bailie, who will talk about the very important business asset that is content. Rahel has been in the business for over 20 years. Since 2002, she has been working as an independent consultant. She cooperates with clients on 4 continents, among others on technical communication projects, website refresh projects, e-commerce to government, and so on. So today she will help us to rethink the idea of content and its influence on the final product. By final product, I mean its usability, trustworthiness, and productivity. So yeah, I think that now we can start. So
good.
I will stop sharing and Rahel, go ahead.
Hi there. We're going to do a little bit of a reintroduction because a number of you were having trouble getting into the Hangout. So we're going to talk about the content economy and the role of content strategy in it. So I want to say that if you look up David Armano on SlideShare, he does a lot about he's a thought leader in kind of the agency space, digital agency space, and he came up with the idea of the content economy. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. So we had for thousands of years an agricultural economy, and it's all about the production of food. And it was kind of, you didn't make a lot, but you didn't need a lot because you were pretty self-sufficient. Then we went to the industrial age and the industrial economy, where you went to a factory and you worked, and then they paid you, and then you could pay for your food and all that you needed, and then you had some discretionary funds left over. Then we moved to the service economy, where you now had enough or sufficient discretionary funds to pay people to do things for you, such as cook your dinner, you'd go out for dinner, you'd have someone come and clean your house or look after your children or whatever you needed to have done. And as we when we had the advent of the internet, we started having more of a knowledge economy, because now you could start sharing knowledge. So it wasn't tangible things anymore all the time. It was also intangible. So sharing your knowledge, and particularly because, through the industrial and service age, we lost that that kind of training, that handing down of tradition, where we knew how to do everything for ourselves. So now you could call up someone or hire someone to give you some information that you needed to provide it for you for running your life. And then we went from there to the information economy. So information economy is an extension of the knowledge economy, where you have an entire industry that springs up around it. So if you think about having any software hardware problems, you call up a call center and they will answer your question, and it's all very industrialized because even the call center has been hired by a company to provide that service for them. And then we see that there has been lots of information out there, and to kind of wade through that sea of information and find what you want, now we've gotten into the attention economy, and particularly in marketing and advertising, very important, because people want eyeballs on their content as opposed to their competitors. So they realize that unless somebody pays attention to it, content is just this drop in the bucket in the wilderness somewhere. So then once you have attention, you get eyeballs, people realize you need to have content for people to pay attention. And so this is an example of the Oreo cookie ad, where one compelling piece of content every day for a year, or more or less a year. And the idea was that this is going to keep Oreo at top of mind for consumers. And so we have this evolution, and we've gotten to the content economy, and we're just starting to get into it, and it's proving to be a very interesting time in the kind of the publishing world. So we have these subsets of content. And there are two basic kind of economic drivers of content. One is location-based content. So either can be geolocated content. In other words, if I'm in England and I search on Richmond, Google is more likely to serve up information about Richmond in the UK rather than Richmond, British Columbia, or Richmond, Virginia. And then there's the flip side to that, which is geofencing, which is, you may be familiar with it from television shows where you try to watch something and it says, sorry, this isn't licensed for your country, we can't serve it to you at this time. So that's kind of keeping people out of your content and saying only these people are entitled to have the content. And then there's verified content. And what's interesting about this is that it has some implications. So we have the endorsement, which is one way of verifying content. So how do you like this page? Rate this page. Is this a good product? Rate this product. Do you like or not like a post on Facebook? So this is all ways of endorsing content that help people decide when they come across something whether it's legitimate or not. And then there's social relevance. So this is when friends will share a page, and then you have a number of friends sharing a page, or they're sharing it by email, or they're sharing it by Facebook, or there's some social relevance that certain circles of people will kind of circulate content around and around. And you'll see this on Facebook where someone will share perhaps something about a cause, and then someone else will share it, and then in another context a week later you'll see someone mentioning it. And so these things kind of gain traction. So sometimes we call it going viral, but even if it doesn't go viral per se, it's this kind of it's relevant to us. So I don't get any information about sports in my feeds because I don't care about sports, but other people may get lots of things about sports in their feeds because it's socially relevant to them. So really what we're talking about here is cultural relevance. There's some culture, whether it's a geographic culture, it's a social culture, it's a community culture, or a tradition, an ethnic culture. There are many ways to call culture, but there's some cultural relevance around content. And what we try to do is tap into that cultural relevance, because that's how people are finding content and how they're consuming content. So what does this mean for content? Well, first we have to figure out how to leverage the value of content, because it's now content is being recognized as a business asset. And whether it's because it's describing a product that you're selling online, or it's some sort of information that you're imparting about your business, or events that you're putting on, it's how people interact with you online. So that is their introduction to your product. That's their introduction to your service. That's how people comprehend your organization and your brand and your stories. And we are now starting to see, and we're not there yet by a long shot, but content, we understand that we need to manage it with as much care as our other assets. So you don't go into the financial department and see them with big books and carbon paper and filling out double entry ledgers. You see them having a system that manages the money, and people enter some data, and it does all the magic in the background to calculate, and you can get reports on it, and so on and so forth. So more progressive companies are starting to see that they need to do that with their content as well, because content has become the big pain point. We figured out how to do software versioning, and UX people have a well-developed way of looking at kind of the process of in developing and creating user experiences and customer experiences. And now we're looking at content and saying, okay, well, we need to step up our game here, because this is actually what people are coming to see. Sometimes I use the example of having someone in your family who's ill. If you go to the Mayo Clinic site because you want to look at the symptoms, you want to read about the symptoms, and if it's not there, you don't stop and go, I love the navigation. Oh, the buttons, the affordance on the buttons is so great. The colors are wonderful. You just kind of go, symptoms, no symptoms, and you go on to the next site. So we're not really there for the packaging and the architecture behind it. We care about it, but that's not what's going to drive our users to come and engage with us as a company or as a brand or as a product. They're coming because of the content. And so calculating the value of content is complex. I've been working with a company that is very good about measuring, X number of, when we change the content this much, this is what happens to it. This is the value that this is how many more products we sell because we made this little change. Not a lot of companies do that. They're still struggling with how do we figure out the value of our content. And sometimes it's not that clear cut, but we're going to look at that a little bit as we go through this presentation. So if we look at the business model of ifixit.com, they have the idea that you should be able to fix your own devices. And so they call it, the right to repair. And their business model was going to be that they would sell parts. They started off with, we're going to sell parts for things like iPhones, Apple products. And if we build it, they will come. And people didn't until they started providing content. So their loss leader for a long time was, we are going to give you the free instructions on how to fix your devices, and then we're going to sell parts to support that. And they are hugely, wildly successful. But how did they derive value from that content other than selling parts? Well, they decided they were going to create a rich content site, but to have the instructions very usable, they actually developed a content standard for their content so that people could kind of write to the content standard so that everything would be consistent, it would be usable, it would draw people in, and it worked. It's called the O standard, and it's for visual manuals and repairs and so on. And they grew a community, and they're actually starting a movement. So which part of that is valuable? Well, all of it is valuable. And did they go into this thinking that they were going to develop a content standard? Well, no. But they realized that that's part of of what makes their content effective. And because they develop the standard now, it can help their business grow because their content is very agile, and they can use that standard to kind of have, what's the word I'm looking for, exponentially grow their company. So when we look at this example, it's an idea whose time, they were ahead of their time. The time has come because they didn't go into this to make manuals. They went into this to sell products because they had an idea that we should all be able to be DIY people. And what they realized is that the content was the valuable part because that's what was drawing people in. So content just has to work well. Long are the days gone where amateur hour was the baseline. So, and as I say that, I realize that the irony of this statement with the graphic that I put up, because you only notice it when there's a problem with it. So I bought a laptop. I won't talk about which company, but this is the notice that came with the laptop, and it came again in an email that says, don't place this computer in contact with your skin. And my first reaction was, how am I going to type if I'm not allowed to touch the computer? So you can see where when content doesn't work, you kind of say, this company is ridiculous. Now, I understand that this is probably the legal department that's driving this, but who let the legal department drive? They're not content people. Well, not in the way that we know of content. So we want to make sure that people aren't paying attention to our content because it's ridiculous. They're just consuming it and not really thinking about the content itself. They're thinking about the message in the content, and not a kind of passing judgment on us because the content is silly. But we have all sorts of new ways that content needs to work as well. We have to have what's called adaptive content, content that adapts as it gets delivered. And the reason it needs to adapt is because we have smaller screens. So when you are accessing something on your laptop, or you're accessing it on your laptop, you don't really mind that it takes a second to download, a 2 megabyte graphic. On your phone, you really care about that, because either you might have a data plan that's now, you've just used up 2 megabytes for this one photo, or it's just taking so long to load. So you want to say, okay, we have to adapt the content for the device. Big long article, great on a PC, on a laptop, maybe not so much on the phone. What about a tablet? That's kind of in between. So that's where you have to run your tests and find out. So, but the point is, it needs to be able to adapt. And so we have things like mobile commerce and mobile banking, and these things are not so much just static content, but it's also interactive content. So when you say click here on your PC, when you deliver it to the phone, maybe it's not click here, or select, press the button. Maybe it's press instead of click. Maybe it's tap instead of click. So there are things that you need to adapt in the actual wording itself so that it still sounds reasonable. And maybe it's not click the button. Maybe it's tap the X in the top right hand corner. So those are all differences we have to think about. And now we're also thinking about how we use tablets and such as entertainment devices. And so when you think about how people receive content, their expectations change. So when you're using your tablet for something other than just browsing, now you're looking at another user experience that's more enriched. And now we also take those expectations and we apply it to our kind of regular world, if you will. So Google Cards is a good example of this, where you have the card experience and you swipe it to go to your next appointment, instead of the old, the PC way of scrolling down in a calendar and then going over, and then you have to click on it to open it and then close it, and so on. So now I noticed that apps are starting to do that, to have cards where it says, this is your next thing, and then you swipe the card and it tells you what your next thing is, and you can go back and forth. So when we start doing those things with entertainment, we start looking for those same patterns in the rest of our content. So excuse me. I want to thank Nazir Bina for this idea that there are content, multiple dimensions to content. So we have, ancillary uses where guys are watching the game and they've got their tablet or their phone, and this is where they have some supplementary content going on, and they're trash talking with their friends, or placing bets, or whatever they're doing, but it's connected to what's going on the screen. Then we have sequential, where you will, so if you've ever sold anything on eBay, you take a picture with your phone, and then you upload it, and then you go to your PC or your tablet, or wherever you have kind of a proper keyboard, and that's where you're going to do all of your content entry. So you want to be able to design for, to be able to have your content that synchronizes between your phone or other mobile device and your laptop. And then you've got your simultaneous use, where you may be collaborating with a colleague and you want to do a screen share, or you want to work on something and push the document over to them, and they work on it and they push it back to you. So those are all things that we have to think about when we're thinking about content, because We have to describe it. So there's the user interface content, and then there's the content that's surrounding it, and how to do something. It's going to be different for the different devices, and so you have to be able to accommodate all those variants. So we also have to consider, kind of in the bigger picture, we have to look at things like market maturity. So there are market differences. It can be a different language, different rules and regulations about how things are sold or what's sold. It could be different requirements for content. So this country requires recycling statements, that one doesn't, and so on and so forth. Lots of different things that happen within a market. Somebody told me a long time ago about a campaign to stop software piracy and software piracy, and how in one country the attitude was kind of like, well, we don't really care about piracy. In another country, it was like, quick, stamp it out. So for each of those countries, you have to develop very different content because they have different cultures. And so you have to think about those things. You also have content differences. So whether it's the idea that you have a wrench in the United States, and in the UK you have a spanner, and it's the same. You're referring to the same physical item, but you have a different name for it. So you have to be able to vary your content according to your audiences. That can make a difference as well. Your content may be different according to how much penetration there is of social networks. In some places, it's very social, and you're expected now to be able to share things or to contact someone via Twitter, or have some sort of social component to your, for example, rate your product. And in other places, it's not quite there yet, and so you have to kind of figure out what's appropriate in each market. The mobile market. So if you go to a country in Africa, they're going to be doing lots on their phones. They're going to be doing their banking. They're going to be doing a lot of things by text. You might not have that if you're doing it in North America. So you're looking at kind of where the market does what. Where do you have to think about phones a lot more than in other countries, and growth opportunities as well. So how you spin your content, how you focus your content. Are you going to have it textual versus visual? It might depend on how much maturity there is in the market and how much growth opportunity there is for you. So all those things you're going to be thinking of when you're producing your content. And then there's the whole idea of cross-market content, which is really becoming a very big thing now. So you can have, as we said before, a single language for many markets, or you could have a single language with variants. So you say shipping and handling in North America, and in the UK you say post and packing, and in Australia you say post and handling. So you've got 3 different variants just within the English. And you have the same thing for kind of German and French and Spanish, where you have different variants for different countries. You could offer, instead of one language for many markets, you could offer native languages in those markets. So you have to decide when it makes sense to say, you know what, we're going to do a lot more business if we have our product supported in that native language. And then you've got this emerging situation where you might have a market. For example, you have German sellers that want to sell into the UK market. So maybe you want to provide some instructions in German for that market, and you want that to be delivered to anyone who logs in from an IP address in Germany. And so those are kinds of variants that companies are starting to explore now. So like, what do we offer to where? So, are we going to explain about this country's our regulations in this country if you are in another language when you are our target market? So those kinds of things can be very interesting and come down the pike. And so you have to think about things like translation, localization, and how you localize and how many variants. And if you're doing products such as medical devices or or mobile phones or anything like that. You have to think about these things because um, it's for mobile devices, you've got some legal requirements, that you can't sell something into a European market unless you have instructions for use in the native language. And with mobile phones, it just makes sense because you've got this, you're marketing to kind of mass consumers and the mass market, and you want to make sure that the consumers can understand what they're doing because you don't want them to return the product because they can't figure out how to use it. So, meeting the need head on, this is where it gets interesting. So, having a content strategy is a necessity in those situations I just described because you need a repeatable system, you need it to govern the management of content, and you need it throughout the entire life cycle. So that's from kind of, this idea of cradle to grave, except it's not really cradle to grave. When you think about a supply chain, content is not a supply chain, because if you worked in any kind of industrial setting, and I use that word very broadly, you know that content doesn't get just used once and then thrown away. It comes back and it gets versioned and it gets revised and it gets versioned again over and over and over again. So it's more of a cycle. So this is the content life cycle that I have been using for a long time. And there's an article about it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because that's an entire presentation unto itself. But if you go to the URL at the bottom, johnnyholland.org, and just basically if you Google content lifecycle Bailie Johnny Holland, it'll come up the article. And what we have is kind of 4 loosely defined quadrants where you plan your content and you plan it on some requirements. So user requirements, content requirements, and business requirements. And and then the rest is implementation. So it's where do I get my content from? And that's all the kinds of content, including your metadata, including your localized content. And you figure out how that's going to work, the processes for how it's going to work, and then how you manage it, how you do the content modeling, how you do the, which standards are you going to use, how is a database going to be built, the repository, I'm sorry, and so on. How is it going to be configured for your content management system? And then you look at the publishing side of it and the post-publishing side of it. So, how do we deliver it? How do we publish it to the website and to mobile and to perhaps ebooks? And how do we package it up for syndication to our sister company or in multiple systems that we may have? So, what's our retention policy? All of those things, you have to think about them up front. So when you're thinking about the content, you're thinking about it not as a circle, but more as like a slinky, that it kind of goes around and around and builds up and up and up. So a tactic is not a strategy. So the analysis and the prescription that comes out of the analysis is actually the strategy, and the rest of it is implementation. And so when someone says, we want to have a Twitter account, that's not a strategy. That's not even a social media strategy. The strategy is the planning of it. The implementing of it, that's implementation. And so if you want to be effective, you need to get involved earlier in the process, when everyone's figuring out the product or the service and the code for it and the delivery mechanism for it. That's when you need to get involved, because by the time it happens and then they say, here, document this, it's too late. You're locked into choices that you may not want to make at that point. So the different content touch points, you have the content lifecycle that you have to think about, but you also have to think about the customer lifecycle, because they go through a discovery phase. Maybe that's when they need some white papers. But if you're giving them white papers when they're looking to have some post-sale service, that's not going to be effective. So you have to think about the content lifecycle, but also the customer lifecycle, and you have to connect those two cycles to make sure that you're delivering the right content at the right time to the right people in the right format and so on. Then you have to think about the multiple variants and variables for your different market conditions, or maybe you have different product lines where 80% of the content is the same and 20% could be different, or multiple outputs. And maybe for multiple markets, and where localization is becoming increasingly complex. So all these things you have to think about all at the same time. And that's why you need a strategy. You can't just kind of take a run at this and do it ad hoc, because it's like running with a handful of noodles. They're going to start falling all over the place. And we're now going from multi-channel publishing to omni-channel. And this is where you have the customer at the center. And you're looking at, where does the customer need to be, how do we service the needs of the customer at any given time? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. You can read something on Red Rocket Ventures. This is adapted from them. And it really does kind of hit all the high points of the things that you need to kind of think about with content. And this is an oldie but a goodie. So when you think about it, traditionally we would say training content gets delivered on the training site, and product content gets delivered over here, and technical content gets delivered over there. And then if you're a customer, you have to run around the site trying to figure out where things are. And at some point, HP said, this is a printer plotter. It's one of those big machines that you might have in an office or in an architect's office, where they print out CAD drawing things. And so what they did was they created basically like a product page. It's like a little portal for everything to do with that product, because you may not own anything by HP, but you may start working in an office where this is the one thing that they have, and so you need to know where to get things for it. And so you could come to this page, you could bookmark this page, and all kinds of content comes together here. You've got your marketing content, your summary and key benefits. You've got your technical content, your manuals if you need them, and your drivers. How many times have you had to look around and kind of do this detective work to go find the drivers for something that you own? So right here, tells you, it points you to where you can go and get your drivers. It gives you support. Training. Who knew that there was training on this product? But with this design, you realize that there is training, and it points you to them. And you have some social, share and learn, and promo for events. So everything kind of came together, that you can see that this is really a company that is valuing the time and effort of their users, because they put together a user experience and they brought all the content together. So you can't really kind of do this, well, this is pre-sales material, this is post-sales material, we do it like this, you do it like that. It doesn't matter if we meet up in the middle. It does matter. It matters because customers now use things like search to find a term. So if you're using a certain term in marketing and then you're not using that same term in your post-sales material, you become in trouble and you look foolish. And so what you want to do is make sure that your content body as a whole is all kind of connected and integrated into something that tells kind of a consistent story. And even a huge product like WebSphere, and that's why I chose this, is because it's so huge. It's a multi-million-dollar product. And do you see what was happening here is they've got a social media account, and what they're doing is they're pointing to content. So in some cases, they're pointing to technical content, and other times they're pointing to marketing content. It's all a convergence of your content types, and they all have to kind of work together to make sense. So you have to abandon your silos, and you have to think about content. And people say it's like getting it to the right people in the right format at the right time. It's more than that. It's getting it from the right sources, because you could have multiple sources on the right platform, to the right people at the right times. And times could mean at the right moment in the buying cycle, or it could mean at the right time of day, for depending on which product you're creating. If you're a radio station, it makes a big difference what you serve at what time of day. Through the right channels, and channels can mean many things, and it applies to all of them. In the right formats, in the right versions, the right languages, and in the right media. If I never see a PDF again, I will be so happy, because downloading a PDF on a smartphone is painful. Let me tell you, I had to do it at the bank the other day, and I just wanted to tear my hair out. Okay, rethink content. I'm going to do a very fast case study because I know we had a delay, so I'm going to go through this very quickly. When I was doing a project for the city of Vancouver, this is the way cities run, is that you have issues that get written up, usually in Word, they get made into PDFs, they get put onto an agenda, and the agenda is often in a PDF, and then the recommendations get published on a web page. And that works fine until you realize that you're delivering all this news to people who don't want the fire hose of news. They just want, they want to know what's happening in their neighborhood or on their street. They don't care what's happening across town. If there's a skunk control or, a garbage problem on the other side of the city, they don't care. They want to know what's happening in their neighborhood. So an agenda has many topics, and it can have up to 40 topics. This is just a little clip from one, a little screenshot from one, and so you can't really do much except deliver the whole thing to everybody. And in the process, people disengage because they see this come in and they think, like, it's too much. I just can't cope with this, and they disengage with the city. So what we wanted to do was rethink content. We said, instead of a PDF, how can we chunk up this content to make it more usable? So we said, okay, what we're going to do is we need to rethink the blob and make it into these modules, and then we can have subsets of output. So how we did it was we said, let's take this agenda and let's make components out of it. So what is an agenda really? An agenda is a social genre. When I look at this and I see the title agenda, I understand it to be what is going to happen at this time and this place in this meeting. So really, this is what we have, is we have a number of items for discussion. So what if we break them up and then we tag them? So we tag them with the name of the neighborhood and the name of the topic, and we tag it with the meeting time and place. Actually, each agenda item, from a technical schema point of view, is an event. It's an event that happens at a certain time in a certain place, which means it's happening within a certain meeting. So if we take that and we rethink the flow of what makes up an agenda, we can say, let's chunk it up and tag it, and now we can deliver it in smaller packages, as small as the chunks we make it. So if it's an agenda item, that's our smallest unit. And we can deliver it to a neighborhood page, each unit. And we can deliver each unit to a topic page. And now it's becoming more useful content. So we have to really stop and take a step back and say, let's rethink content right from the ground up. And we want to work towards this notion of an integrated content strategy. And this is not an ad for Kobo, but it's not that I'm endorsing Kobo. I really like this ad because when I looked at it, I thought, of course, when you're publishing a book, you have to think about all of these outputs right from the get-go. You can't say, I'm going to publish a book for Kindle, but not for Kobo, or I'm going to do it for reading on a tablet, but not on a smartphone. They have to think about this right from the get-go. So we have to start thinking about this also from the get-go, right from the ground up. So if you think about it in terms of a content maturity model, because by now, and partly because I'm talking very fast, and partly because if you've been thinking about this, you might be going, oh, this is overwhelming. You have to start thinking there is a maturity model. You're not expected to go from level 1 to level 5 immediately. So you find where you are on the scale, where your organization is, and you just try to move up a level. And once you're comfortable there, then you can move up another level until you've gotten the value out of the content that you want. So content strategy needs you to do a few things. It needs you to get inspired and get informed and get involved and get together with your colleagues and really get content. So I have a book called that I wrote with Nazir Bina called Content Strategy: Connecting the Dots Between Business, Brand, and Benefit. It talks a lot about what I've talked about here, but in more depth. There's a new book out called The Language of Content Strategy, and it's not just a book. It's a website, it's a deck of cards, it's audio files. It's quite the project. So go and look. Every week we release one new term on the site, and you can go and discuss it there and learn about that term and debate the term if you'd like. And Scott Abel and I put on a series of workshops called Content Strategy Workshops. We have one-day intensives that shows you kind of how to survive your first project in an agency. And we have multi-presenter 2-day workshops, kind of like a conference idea, but there are no presentations, just workshops. And of course, come to the SOAP conference because it's going to be a great conference. I'm going to be there. I'm very honored to be asked to be one of the keynote speakers, and I hope to see you all there. So thank you very much. And if we have any questions, I am happy to go through them now.
Thank you, Rahel.
Paulina.
I will just download the questions and you will see what's going on there.
Okay. For me to do that, I need to take down the presentation.
Okay.
So let me do that. Okay.
Okay, it seems that we don't have many questions here.
Really?
So,
I'm surprised.
Yeah, just two. And the first
we
one
only have about
is
3 minutes, so that's probably good.
the first one is what's the weather like in the UK now?
It was sunny earlier today, but it's a little overcast now. But the weather's nice. I'm enjoying it in the UK.
Okay, that's great. It seems it's better than it's in Krakow. Because here it's quite windy and the wind is cold, so it seems that in UK it's better now.
but you're gonna work on that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and another one comment is from our colleague from Motorola who moved to another company, and it says greetings to our Motorola from Piotr Sroka. It was plus 4 times. So thank you, Piotr. Greetings to you too. And yeah, it seems that there are no specific question to you. So
that always makes me a little nervous because either it means that people are feeling very overwhelmed and they don't know what to ask, or they're very bored. So I would ask people to tell us one way or the other whether they found this presentation interesting or not. And so you can email me, or you can email the SOAP people, or put something on the Google Plus page, because I am truly interested to know what the reactions are to this.
Okay, so yeah, so if you have any questions, yeah, another question is the presentation being recorded? Yes, it's being recorded, and it will be available via SOAP blog site. So we will let you know, and we will announce it when it is available. So yeah, so again, as Rahel said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask SOAP or Rahel. If you ask SOAP, we will contact Rahel, and definitely you will get your answers. So it seems we are done on time.
On time, wow.
One more comment. It is a lot of material to digest in a short time, but an excellent synthesis. So it's from Ray Gallon.
Oh,
thank you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, so we are done. Thank you, Rahel, for the presentation.
My pleasure.
Have a good day. All of you have a good day. And see you soon during the next webinar that probably will take place at the end of May. And it is probable that our guest will be Tom Johnson, who is a author of a very well-known blog for technical writers. So check our site, and of course we will inform you about another events. Thank you once again, and take care. Bye.